Thank you all for being very flexible. We had hoped to do this big kickoff in the executive office building, but unfortunately, due to snow and other circumstances, we've decided to do this virtually. So thank you all for being patient with us as we go through the presentation. What we're going to do today is start with some introductory comments from the county executive. Then we'll move on to a presentation by the Office of Management and Budget, and then we'll come back and answer questions for the press. So, County Executive Elrich. Just as he took a sip of coffee, we will turn it over to him.
Just as I did. So I'm going to be very brief. I've got COVID, so I'm a little under the weather right now, and the kid can't quite keep a sustained talking going on. So I'll just say, there are a couple of highlights that we moved some big things forward in this budget. We continue to invest in transportation and housing. We've the schools get a continued increase in their capital budget, so that in order to address some of their needs. But again, they put in a proposal that is outside the ability of the county to fully fund it. We don't have the money within our bonding authority to fund it. There's a cap that's set on how much we can borrow, and there's not enough in the cap to fund the budget. There's not enough state money that comes to help support our gap in budget funding. We will continue, and this is not unusual. This is pretty normal. They front load their budget. They leave the back years of the budget pretty empty, which we know is never what they're going to be. And so, we've adjusted some of the years of the spending to match our ability to get bond money out there. That's, one of our biggest impediments. And the schools compete inside of our budget against all the transportation projects, the roads, the bridges, the road maintenance, anything else, libraries, improvements at the correction center. The schools are just part of something that has to fit within the amount of money we have for capital. And so that's the reality, and it hasn't changed since I was on the council. Other big thing is we're going to announce today that out of our surplus, the county is ending the year with a very strong surplus, that we're going to take $50 million and send over a supplemental to the council to put that money into affordable housing. We've already committed almost all the money we were planning on having next year to projects. We don't want to not be able to do any projects, so we're going to continue to provide resources. And assuming that nothing changes between now and March, and we continue to hold our surplus the way it seems like it's going to be, we'll ask for another $50 million then. So that would add some substantial extra money in terms of housing production. And this budget, you'll see for the first time a very big increase in stormwater funding. The county as many places has experienced even greater levels of storms and flooding in the county. We know that the capacity of our stormwater system is not adequate to handle the water that's actually coming down now. We've hired a company to assess all of the watersheds. We want to make sure that if we're going to put money into repairs, we're not just fixing the spot where the flooding is being experienced, but that we're actually looking at everything that moves water to the point that you get a flood. So there you'll see a serious increase in the amount of funding for that. And otherwise, I think it's a pretty happy budget. We've got the much awaited Clarksburg Library in there. We'll say we will probably come back and enlarge that because we think the library is probably too small. And so we'll probably, during the course of the next couple of months, amend this to be slightly larger. But I will stop there for now because I feel another sneeze coming on, and I'll turn this back to somebody else.
Thank you very much, Mr. County Executive. And thank you for going on mute before you sneezed. So we will we'll go on to the presentation by Rachel Silverman. Want to start though by thanking all of the county employees who are out on the roads today, doing their best to clean up from the snowstorm to prepare us for tomorrow. and overnight when the temperatures go down. But for the last 48 hours, lots of county employees have been out trying to make sure the roads, sidewalks, other infrastructure is all accessible and safe during what has been the largest snowstorm, I guess, or snow event. I don't know if we call it a storm, snow event over the last several years. So great work to all of them. And we also want to give a shout out to Governor Moore, who announced today additional funding for transportation, reversing his earlier decision that would have resulted in a $17 million cut to ride-on services, additional reductions in the General Highway Assistance Program, as well as the closure of one of the MVA offices in the county. So the governor has reversed those decisions and announced that he's going to fund those items. So with that, I will turn it over to Rachel Silverman, who is a lead analyst in, I know I used a DLS term there, Rachel, with the Office of Management and Budget, who's going to run through our CIP presentation.
Great, thank you. I do have a PowerPoint. I don't know if I'm sharing or if someone else is sharing that. I have it up if I have, oh, perfect. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into the major capital needs that are addressed by this recommended CIP release. So this is a summary of those major needs that have to be addressed within the county's limited resources, and school construction, transportation, bus rapid transit, and affordable housing are top priorities of the county executives as well as the county council, as in addition to the other items on this list. And so this recommended 6-year plan does move those priorities forward. Next slide.
We lost the slides. And now we're back.
There we are. Okay, next, perfect, thank you. Okay, so COVID construction market impacts are still very much affecting the bid receipts that the county is experiencing, and that's true for county government, transportation, as well as outside agencies, including Montgomery County Public Schools. Inflation, supply chain deficiencies, and labor shortages are all driving up our costs. And so as a result, we have less buying power for our ongoing maintenance projects. And those are projects where we have a set amount of funding set aside for each year to do things like roof replacement and resurfacing. And it can also cause delays for standalone projects when the costs exceed the budget that we had set aside as a result of higher than anticipated costs. Next slide. So the Board of Education requested $466 million in fiscal 25, but only $123 million in fiscal 30. And that pattern of larger requests in the early years of the 6-year plan and much smaller requests in the later years ends up understating what Montgomery County Public Schools needs in the out years. So as a result, what the county does is fund other important county capital priorities like transportations, libraries, and fire stations in those later years of the CIP. And then when the school system comes back again in the following budget cycle and requests those additional increases, we don't have any unprogrammed money available. And so we will either be forced to defer important projects like transportation improvements and recreation centers, or to decline to refund the requested school construction increases. So the chart that you're looking at here shows the increase requested by the Board of Education in each of the first 4 years of the CIP. That's in the top line. And it's compared to the unallocated general obligation bonds that we have available in the bars at the bottom. And so here you can see that MCPS has requested increases on average 4.5 times the amount of funding that is available to support it without disrupting other projects that are already underway. Next slide. So the council has approved a spending affordability guideline for general obligation bonds that limits the county to issuing no more than $280 million a year. And as recently as 2018, we were issuing $340 million in general obligation debt annually. So that's $60 million less to support important projects every year of our 6-year plan. And as a result of that inflation and escalation that we've experienced since COVID, $280 million a year doesn't buy what it used to. So we would actually need to be issuing about $340 million a year today in order to maintain the buying power that $280 million had as recently as 2018. Next slide. So the sluggish housing market has had a negative effect on the county's recordation tax and recordation tax premium collections, especially in the first 4 years of the 6-year period. And that's when the demands from the outside agencies and county departments are the greatest. So recordation and impact tax reductions in the current year total almost $26 million. And that's money that's needed to support projects that are currently under construction. So addressing this challenge as well as the others that we just discussed was a major focus in terms of assembling the recommended capital improvement program that is being presented today. Next slide. And the next slide. Okay, so the recommended 25 through 30 capital improvement program totals $5.8 billion, and this chart shows how that funding is allocated across departments and agencies. So to the left-hand side, kind of in the blue tones, you'll see that education, MCPS and Montgomery College represent nearly 40% of all capital spending. That's followed by transportation at just under 30%, and then the rest of county government operations, which is a pretty broad category. It includes economic development, affordable housing, public safety, libraries, recreation centers, health and human services, as well as just general maintenance of county facilities is in that yellowish color at about 26%. Next slide. This chart shows how much we're able to support by category in this recommended 6-year plan compared to the prior approved CIP, given the limited resources that are available to the county. So on the top, you'll see that despite revenue reductions in the first 4 years of the 6-year plan and significant cost increases for many of the previously approved projects in transportation and county government, the county executive was able to maintain MCPS's funding level at the record high previously approved amount of $1.9 billion. In contrast, right below that, you'll see funding for transportation, which decreases due to deferrals that the county executive was forced to make in order to accommodate that additional funding for Montgomery County Public Schools in the early years of the capital improvement program. In the middle, you'll see funding for county government remains relatively flat. And then towards the bottom, funding for Montgomery College and Park and Planning both increased relative to the previously approved 6-year plan, which we'll discuss in more detail shortly. Next slide. Okay, this chart shows how expenditures for county government projects are allocated. So the gray tones represent transportation, which is more than half of the county government pot, and mass transit is the largest category there at more than $900 million. The next largest category in the red tones is general government at 10%, and funding for that category supports critical things like economic development and maintaining our existing buildings and also technology projects. And then stormwater management, which is in that yellow tone, represents about 9% of all funding for this recommended 6-year plan. And that category has increased significantly from the previously approved CIP due to some critical investments that this recommended budget makes in addressing flood mitigation. And that's along the lines of what other jurisdictions across the region have started to do. Next slide. This chart shows the change in major funding sources in this recommended 6-year plan compared to the prior CIP. So at the top, general obligation bonds are essentially flat. Recordation taxes are down, and those decreases are largest in the current fiscal year and the first 4 years of the CIP when the needs are the greatest. While recordation tax premium is up over the prior CIP, as we discussed on a prior slide, they are down in the current fiscal year and in the first 4 years of the 6-year capital improvement program. Tax-supported cash funding is up substantially due to one-time cash investments that the county executive is recommending in order to advance important policy priorities, in particular housing, that he and the council share. And then pay-go also increases due to the use of some of the county's one-time surplus to backfill for fiscal 24 and 25 recordation and impact tax shortfalls. So without that additional cash, it would have been necessary to disrupt projects that are currently ongoing. Next slide. And the next slide. All right, in terms of education, this recommended 6-year plan continues the previously approved record funding level of $1.9 billion, and it adds almost $170 million to the first 4 years for Montgomery County Public Schools, despite revenue reductions in the early years of the 6-year period. And in order to do that, a number of previously approved plan projects, especially in transportation, had to be deferred. Montgomery County Public Schools continues to be the largest CIP spending category, and this county drives 43% of all local construction dollars, which includes bonds, impact, and recordation taxes to support school construction. And this recommended CIP also supports a major step forward in establishing a permanent East County Montgomery College campus. Next slide. For housing, this recommended 6-year plan provides almost $195 million in additional funding to support affordable housing, and that includes $50 million in current revenue to finance new affordable housing projects. The county executive also intends to add another $50 million in March. The county executive recommends increasing funding for the nonprofit Housing Preservation Fund by 150%, and this program also launches a new troubled and distressed common ownership communities program to help sustain existing affordable housing in the community. Next slide. This recommended CIP invests $1.7 billion to support transportation infrastructure, and more than $900 million of that goes to support mass transit, including advancing bus rapid transit, although there is more to do, as you'll hear about in a few moments. There are also substantial investments in pedestrian facilities and bikeways, highway maintenance, and traffic improvements, among other important priorities that are listed here. Next slide. This recommended CIP provides more than $588 million to build bus rapid transit, and the key to this project's success really is that it is a proposed transit system rather than just a single line, and so that is expected to drive up utilization and economic benefits. On the flip side of that, the project will simply not be as effective if the county is forced to implement it sort of in a piecemeal way due to a lack of resources. So this recommended 6-year plan funds the construction of Veers Mill Road Bus Rapid Transit, which will open in fiscal 27, construction of 355 Central between Rockville and Germantown with service launching in fiscal 29, and final design of the northern and southern segments of 355 by fiscal 26, as well as preliminary engineering for dedicated bus lane on US 29. So the faded lines of the map that you're looking at here indicates the system components that currently cannot be funded given the limited resources that are currently available to the county. Next slide. This recommended 6-year plan also funds increases for important resurfacing and sidewalk repair and adds several new bridge projects supported by federal aid. Next slide. There are a number of pedestrian and bicycle projects that are programmed in this recommendation that are under construction or expected to begin construction in fiscal 25. And the county is also recommending a new project that includes new federal funds that were awarded in order to implement bike parking improvements down county. Next slide. For the environment, the county executive's recommended CIP makes important investments to support implementation of the building energy performance standards in county-owned facilities, to start implementing the comprehensive flood management plan, as well as advancing the county's transition to zero-emission bus fleet and making progress on a new bus depot in order to support that fleet's transition to zero emissions. Next slide. This capital improvement program advances design and construction of the much-awaited Clarksburg Library for a growing community that currently doesn't have one, as the county executive mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, and it also adds funds for a new Western County Recreation Center. The county executive is also recommending enhanced funding for the historic Lincoln High School to continue stabilizing that facility for public use of the space. Next slide. This recommended CIP supports the build out of the ground floor arts and cultural space at the Wheaton Arts and Culture Center. We are also all looking forward to the spring opening of the Silver Spring Recreation and Aquatic Center. And there is recommended funding to support 2 new ongoing maintenance projects to support the recreation facilities, which are very heavily used and need to be kept in good repair. Next slide. The recommended capital improvement program adds funds for several new exciting economic development initiatives, including the build out of the Wheaton headquarters retail space, a new partnership with the Henry Jackson Foundation Innovation Labs at Montgomery County, and land acquisition supporting economic development goals around the Glenmont Shopping Center. In addition, this 6-year plan maintains support for transit-oriented redevelopment in North Bethesda and mixed-use redevelopment in White Oak. Next slide. For public safety, we're looking forward to the opening of both the Clarksburg Fire Station and the 6th District Police Station, which are currently under construction. And the White Flint Fire Station project remains on schedule in this recommended 6-year plan, with a completion expected in fiscal 27. In addition, work on the diversion center continues, and it is expected to reach completion at the end of fiscal 29. Next slide. This budget supports other important priorities, including the installation of security cameras in county-owned parking garages, audiovisual equipment replacement for the circuit court, and modest inflationary increases for ongoing maintenance projects. Next slide. Next slide. This recommended 6-year plan directs almost $46 million in one-time surplus to backfill fiscal 24 and 25 revenue shortfalls to ensure that projects that are underway are not disrupted. And in addition, the county executive is recommending directing $50 million in cash to advance our shared affordable housing priorities. And in addition to that, there are some one-time cash investments in the CIP, also utilizing one-time surplus. Next slide. This budget was not put together without hard choices, especially in light of the reduced revenues from the county structural challenges with the Montgomery County Public Schools budget. And as a result, the county executive was forced to defer a number of important projects because there simply aren't enough resources to do them, especially in the areas of transportation, and those impacted projects are listed on this slide. Next slide. The county was not able to fund all of the requests made by the outside agency partners, and though the recommendation does provide $1.9 billion for school construction, more than $90 million of the board's request was unaffordable. For Montgomery College, the county executive was not able to accommodate the $83 million requested for the Rockville Theater Arts building renovation. And while the recommendation for park and planning provides more than $300 million, their request included $13 million, which could not be afforded within the limited resources available. Next slide. All right.
And I think it's going to turn over to me at this point. So again, to go back to the slide that Rachel had presented before, this is the plan for the bus rapid transit system in Montgomery County. This capital budget provides $588 million to move this comprehensive plan forward. Remember, bus rapid transit, when done right, is dedicated lanes for vehicles, for high capacity buses to move quickly through congestion. So it very much is like Metro Rail, but on the surface. So you can see the comprehensive plan that the county has been working towards for more than a decade. We have a line currently in operation from Silver Spring to Burtonsville, but again, it does not have dedicated right-of-way for much of its run. So what this budget plans is improving US 29 and the flash service there, finishing and constructing the Beers Mill light rail line from the Wheaton Metro Station all the way to Montgomery College Rockville, connecting also with the Rockville Metro Station, the central part of the 355 corridor, as well as final design for the entire corridor from the Clarksburg Outlet Complex all the way down to the Bethesda Metro Station, and hopefully getting to Friendship Heights and into the District of Columbia, as well as the preliminary plan for a New Hampshire Avenue BRT. You can see in the muted areas that there are other parts of our plan that are not included in design. I failed to mention the North Bethesda line that would connect from the North Bethesda Metro Station to the Montgomery Mall Transit Center, two big employment centers in the county. So if you can move to the next slide, as Rachel stated in her presentation, we have a difficult time reconciling the transportation needs for the county in order for us to remain economically competitive, especially with our neighbors in Northern Virginia, as well as continue the important and critical investments in our school system and, of course, at Montgomery College. And we've got to find a way to address this problem, because under our current structure, we do not have the resources to build the infrastructure which are so critical to job growth and continued competitiveness regionally and nationally, which is why new state legislation that would allow us to tap into some of the revenue streams that Northern Virginia has been able to over the last decade is so critically important. If we can move to the next slide, you can see that over the last decade, Northern Virginia, with agreement of the Virginia General Assembly, has instituted a number of local taxes, which have resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars coming into infrastructure improvements on an annual basis in Northern Virginia. So they get 0.7% of the 6% sales tax in Virginia is dedicated solely to transportation projects in Northern Virginia of the expenditures that happen, the spending that occurs in Northern Virginia, the sales tax revenue that's generated by the stores and other places that pay sales tax in Northern Virginia. There's a 2% hotel tax. There is a congestion relief tax of 15 cents per $100. That is their state grantors tax. That is the Virginia term for the recordation tax that we have in Maryland. Of these various sources, 70% goes to the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. For regional projects, 30% is returned to the county where the revenues were actually generated, so that Fairfax County gets 30% of the revenues that are generated within the county. Again, that can only go into transportation investments. The Virginia General Assembly also had and allowed its counties in Northern Virginia to set a 12.5 cent per $100 commercial property tax. So all commercial properties, for example, in Fairfax County or Arlington County, pay this additional 12.5 cents into a transportation trust fund just for improvements in Northern Virginia. In addition, if we move on to the next slide, these resources, when combined with the additional authorities that have been granted to Northern Virginia, have allowed Virginia to move forward with these substantial projects, which not only deal with congestion, but also help keep Northern Virginia economically competitive. All of that additional infrastructure built out to the Silver Line, the changes to the improvements to a variety of the major corridors across Northern Virginia has been made possible by all of these additional revenues that Virginia is able to generate. If you move on to the next slide, you'll see that, again, look at $3.3 billion over the last 8 years to the big jurisdictions in Northern Virginia, including nearly $1.5 billion to Fairfax County alone for improvements to their transportation network. Next slide. So, important things to know about Virginia. Again, all roads in Northern Virginia are responsibility of the state government. Fairfax County, which is larger from a population standpoint and a square mileage standpoint than Montgomery County, only maintains 10 miles of roads. The state of Virginia maintains every other road. In Montgomery County, that is a split between the state and the state government and the county government. So today, when I started the call talking about all the great county employees who are out driving snow plows, that is all on us to provide, as opposed to in Virginia, when that is entirely a responsibility of the Virginia Department of Transportation. The Virginia has been able to use multiple different local and regional funds, not only the taxes that I went over, but special taxing districts that have been put in place to help build the Silver Line, to help Route 28 corridors, as well as improvements in Tysons and Ballston and National Landing. They turned over the Dulles Toll Road to the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority for the toll revenues to help support the construction of the Silver Line. They have created a system of assessing regional projects and ranking them as far as their ability to reduce congestion. And those projects are funded by the priority through the Smart Scale program, where they review projects. Next slide. It's so important to note, and Rachel touched a little bit about on this in her presentation. One of the key components of what Virginia has done is by providing these taxes and the certainty and stability of these taxes, it has allowed the Virginia jurisdictions to go out and actually bond against these revenues to create these very large projects. In Montgomery County, where we have impact taxes, where you might have, you're building a new office building, you're going to have an assessment of its impact on the infrastructure within the county. You have to pay that tax up front. You have to add that to the overall development costs. You have to borrow against it, put the cash up. It adds to the overall cost of the development. In Virginia, by not having those impact taxes, but by having these special taxing districts, by having this commercial tax, in essence, they are able to do the same thing, but they put that cost out over years in the property tax that is charged against the building. So the developer doesn't have to upfront the costs. They can charge the costs to their tenants during the life of the building. This allows, again, Virginia jurisdictions to borrow money against these revenues because they have the certainty of those revenues. With our impact taxes, we might get a huge chunk for one building and then another big chunk from another building, but those numbers are random by what's being built. It's cash. We can dedicate the cash to certain projects, but you don't have the stability and the certainty to bond against it. So we are unable to accomplish some of these major projects that would allow us to remain competitive. Just looking at this chart, you can see in Fairfax County, the different special taxing districts that they have added to their in various regions of the county in order to do these projects. Remember, that is on top of the $1.09 property tax that is assessed against all properties, the 12.5-cent property tax that is assessed against all commercial properties. And then if you are in the Dulles Rail Phase 2, that's an additional 18 cents that you're paying. So that's 30 cents on top of the $1.10, much higher than the $1.04 property tax that you would be paying in a commercial district within Montgomery County. You can see the Arlington County special taxing districts where they have the ability to charge for additional projects in Ballston, National Landing, and Roslyn. And again, this is on top of the 12.5-cent commercial tax that Arlington charges against all commercial properties, all the Amazon investments, for example, in National Landing, in order to continue to build the infrastructure. And the virtuous cycle that is created by new infrastructure allows for more development. More development brings in more revenue. It actually drives down the special taxing districts fees because they're generating more. So Virginia has come up with a plan that we believe allows them to make the critical investments to remain competitive. and regionally and nationally. And if we want to compete with Northern Virginia, we need to do the same things, which is what the county executive has been talking about repeatedly over the last year, talking about it with Governor Moore, Lieutenant Governor Miller, talking about it with the other county executives, our legislative delegation, trying to make the case that these sorts of critical infrastructure projects must happen in order for us to remain competitive with Northern Virginia, in order for us to meet our climate goals, in order for us to continue to develop. It's our choice right now. Either we move forward with some of these changes and make the critical investments, or we risk becoming a bedroom community, not only to the District of Columbia, but to Tyson's and to Ballston and National Landing. Moving on to the next slide. You can see in just the last decade, Virginia has been able to do $7.1 billion worth of investments into their regional economy because of this tax plan. $3.1 billion in taxes raised in Northern Virginia, matched by $3 billion in revenue that's come from the state and the federal government for all of these massive projects, which again, look at 42,000 jobs created, an important effort that has allowed Northern Virginia to move forward. And one more slide. And we also want to take this moment to thank Mary Beck. Mary has been the capital budget coordinator for many years, an outstanding public servant for decades in Montgomery County, who will, unfortunately for us, be departing at the end of this capital cycle. So we wanted to take a moment to recognize and thank Mary for her many contributions. There are so many people that work for the county government that help do good things each and every day. Mary is certainly one of those people who has had a tremendous impact on the direction of the county, and she will be missed when she departs. And with that, I am happy to leave the presentation and turn this over to questions. Are there any questions for Danny from the Washington Post? Has his hand up.
Hey, so I have a couple questions. One, just to be clear, regarding the fiscal limitations, like, were any of the transportation projects affected by these limitations?
Well, we would certainly, if we had, I mean, the whole idea of you can only borrow so much money based upon the revenues that you have coming in. There are certain guidelines that we have to adhere to. So without additional revenues, you can't do that borrowing. Without that borrowing, we can't move forward with a much larger transportation program. For example, we would be constructing, not just planning, but actually moving forward with the construction of the whole 355 bus rapid transit system, you know, really on Maryland's Main Street. When you think about how important the 355 corridor is to the economy of Maryland and the metropolitan area, that having that investment of bus rapid transit, added transportation, mass transit, quick, efficient, from Clarksburg all the way potentially to Friendship, through Bethesda to Friendship Heights, would be a huge advantage to us. We can't move forward with that because we simply do not have the revenues without having to push out a whole bunch of investments in education or other critical assets, libraries, fire stations, police stations that we have to invest in. I think the county executive also wants to give an answer.
I just want to amplify that. It's not just our money we don't have, but if we wanted to submit for federal funds, you have to show where your share's coming from. Under the current system, we can't do that. There's nothing to show. There's nothing to show that would justify the feds giving us, you know, half of a $600 million project, because we can't with a straight face say, yeah, we're going to be able to put $300 million into this. And so we're absolutely, totally paralyzed by this. And this is the big difference between the impact taxes, which we have, which you can't bond on because you have no certainty what tax you're going to get in any given year, and going to this taxing structure where you know what your income is going to be every year, So you can go out to a rating agency to get a bond rated. You can go to a federal agency and say, we've got the money. And they look at it and say, yeah, these are your property values. This is your tax. This is what's going to generate. We can see that you're going to be able to pay this. So we're paralyzed, not just in the immediate sense of not having enough cash on hand. We're paralyzed in the long-term sense because we can't plan without money, because people will not play with us unless we can demonstrate we come to the table with something.
In the short term, though, has the county, made up for this difference by dipping into surplus?
I mean, historically, I've been executive 5 years, but it was true when Ike was here. They just broke projects into longer timeframes. I mean, we're lucky. We've got this surplus. The county always hasn't had that surplus up until like 4 years ago. I guess it's 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. The county had never achieved its bonding, its goals of how much reserves the county had. We were supposed to have 10%. We never had that before. We're in a moment where we have that, and we're putting, and so we're using money for housing and other things, but we don't have enough that's going to make a difference to let us move some of these things over. And we're not going to take it all the way down to 10%. So we're trying to leave some cushion, but balancing all these things, the schools aren't getting everything. If you see our list of cuts in transportation, there are projects we took out in order to fit this in. All these projects have to compete with schools, and that's the problem. That's a bigger problem internally. The thing about special taxing districts is once you're funding transportation with special taxing districts, the projects in our current capital budget, like BRT and other, the second entrance to the metro in Pike and Rose, Observation Drive, those are projects that would be eligible to put under the special taxing districts, and that would enable us to take that out of our current capital budget, freeing up capital so we don't have these draconian decisions of what schools are I going to build, what rec center are I going to open, and how long will I delay the next library. So these
But
interplay with each other.
Danny, you did pick up on the information during the presentation about the recordation tax. Right now, we have recordation tax revenues that are specifically dedicated to the capital budget. That cash goes into the budget. We don't borrow against it. The recordation tax, which of course is charged when you record a new deed, because of real estate transactions going down because of higher than more recent mortgage rates, that has slowed down our recordation tax revenues. So for FY24 and FY25, the county executive in this budget proposes moving, I think, roughly $45 million out of our surplus, currently sitting in our surplus, to backfill that gap in where we estimated that recordation taxes were going to be and what they've turned out to be. So we are using surplus in a little bit to move things around. But really, when you think about the larger transportation projects that are necessary in the county, there simply aren't the revenues, even with the surplus, nowhere near the revenues in order to make those large scale improvements.
Got it. One last question. How does that affect the construction time for BRT?
Oh, it's this project. I'll give you an example. When I started working on this, back when I was a council member, probably around 2008, we were talking to the company that did the BRT system in Toronto. And they basically put a system, not just a line, a system in place in about 2 years. We've talked to people who've done this, where they actually lived in places that actually invested in transportation. And they've been able to do these projects relatively quickly. Remember, we're not building tunnels, we're not building bridges, we're not doing major, destruction of the built environment. And we would be able to rapidly accelerate this if we created the bonding structure where the project goes in there. We've done, in the worst of years, taken $12 or $15 million of design work and spread it over 3 years to create a lousy $3 or $4 million a year in our space in our budget for other things we needed to get into the budget. So it really shapes, it's part of shaping everything else, and we have to make these trade-offs, and no one's going to be happy if we don't provide some of the other things we need to provide. So it's really messed us up in a kind of fundamental way.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny, very much, and welcome to the Montgomery County Press Corps. Scott.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. County Executive, I'm sorry about the COVID.
Yeah, me too.
Sometimes when we communicate with the public, it's maybe, well, it helps me grasp things if we can sort of give an example, a hypothetical. When you talk about a special taxation district
Yeah.
in Montgomery County, could you share a hypothetical vision with us about what that would look like? Who would be taxed?
So we're not, for example, we're not building projects on the scale of the Silver Line. You know, Montgomery County is not doing the metro. But for what we're doing, we don't need the same amount of capital. So Virginia, the Northern Virginia counties have an authority for a 12.5 cent tax on all commercial property that can only be used for transportation projects. That's something, and it's got guardrails around it. So, and the developers wanted it, and I have no problem with it. It meant that money could only be used for transportation. The government couldn't collect it and then say, hey, you know, we're going to fund, you know, social programs and other things like that. Nope, it's locked into providing transportation. They've got 3 taxes in Tyson's Corner that amount to 32 cents, and 2 of the 3 are exclusively on commercial property. 1 is shared between commercial and residential. Our goal is to not put residential under these taxes. And that was a plan that, you know, some people had brought forward, but, you know, it involved, you know, where the residents would wind up paying for a big chunk of this. And that's not what it should be. The residents are going to deal with operating costs. The private sector, which is the primary beneficiary of this, the people who are going to see their property values increase, who are going to see their properties more attractive and easier to rent, they're the ones that need to be paying for this kind of investment. It's in their interest. And the thing that baffles me forever is that when this happened in Virginia, it was under a Republican governor with a Republican legislature that the Democratic council from Fairfax went down with the developers and asked to give the Northern Virginia counties the ability to tax, because they understood taxes would go to transportation, transportation would increase the viability and attractiveness of their projects. That would bring in more money for them. They develop more property more quickly, and it was a virtuous cycle. So, you know, for everybody who's always saying, you know, look at Virginia and why aren't we like Virginia? We're not like Virginia because we had no foresight. People were absolutely unwilling to consider anything that would tax developers, God forbid. And if you're not doing that, then you're basically dead in the water. So if you want to be like them, you should do it. And the developers should understand this is actually a benefit to them, because the impact tax, you know how this is structured. If you go to build a project, you get all your construction costs. In Montgomery County, we're going to ding you with an impact tax for schools and transportation. And it can be many millions of dollars. And it's on the front end of your project. And so when you're doing your project, you've got to raise the extra capital to pay for this tax, which means you have to have higher rents to support the higher cost of actually building your project, which all in includes all the construction, but also this tax. So in Virginia, they don't have that. On the front end, the taxes are on the back end. It's a 30-year tax, only for the transportation, and the tenants, they absorb it. It's a pass-through. Most developers are going to pass it through, but it's instead of having the cost of the tax on the front end being passed through in the form of rent. So it's probably not much different to the tenant. It's a big difference to the developer, because the developer isn't going to be the one that's going to be paying these taxes, assuming their buildings are occupied. So they actually win on this deal. And they just need to be happy and win and let us go about building the things they need. I can't compete with Virginia and do the things they do. We're in a situation, I've talked to members of the council in Fairfax. If developer comes in and says, we want to build here, you've got this project in your master plan, when is this project going to be done? Is it going to be done when it says it's going to be done? And in Virginia, they can say yes, We have the funding, we have a plan, and we will get the project done. In Montgomery County, the answer is we have no idea when a project's going to get done because we have no idea where the money's coming from. We really don't. And
Got it.
I've had developer representatives, and I've had companies like some of the big real estate consulting companies tell us that we lose the competition because we can't offer any certainty on when we're going to do anything that's in a master plan.
Sorry about the sneeze.
Me too.
So listen, sometimes I expose my ignorance for the question, but you don't learn unless you don't ask. I'm completely uneducated on the BRT vision, probably because I don't see these bus lanes built. And yet I just looked at the slide, which suggested at least some of these are going to be built soon. Could you educate me on, I'm on 355 right now working out of the vehicle. Am I going to see a bus lane here in the next few years based on this capital budget? What is it?
But if we get the taxing authority, you'll get a bus lane there. The master plan for 355 from right above the Beltway up till Rockville calls for a widening of the road so that in the middle you can accommodate 2 BRT lanes in like a park-like setting. This is part of the master plan. In order to enhance the attractiveness of a place that we're trying to make the center of the next stage of big development in Montgomery County. So you would have separated bus lanes out of traffic. In the system we're designing, a lot of it runs not in traffic. Some of it runs on a single lane where the lane is used by the bus going in the peak direction. If you've been here long enough, Scott, if you're coming from the north in Montgomery County, congestion is north to south in the morning and south to north in the evening. So instead of adding 2 lanes, it's kind of like our argument about lanes on 270. Instead of adding 2 lanes, one of which won't really be used in the non-peak hours, you add 1 lane down the middle, and the bus going in the peak direction goes down there. It's got signal priority. It's not stuck in traffic. It runs more like a train than anything else. It can achieve 30 miles an hour, all those nice things. And then the bus going in the opposite direction can drive on the road because they can drive the speed limit. So that's the bulk of what you would see, a combination of 2 lane and 1 lane, and occasionally where we don't have a solution yet, the bus would run in mixed traffic for a while. But
we got a lot of money designated for BRT, as I saw the graph, and I'm wondering when we see some of these lanes.
So you're going to see Veers Mill Road in the next couple of years. We have the money to do Veers Mill, and that is actually moving forward, which is good. And we've got funding for a middle section that gets us up to Montgomery College. So we close the north end of the red line, and we make a connection to Montgomery College up in Rockville. So that's a good thing. We're going to
with the funding that's in the budget, we could have the dedicated bus rapid transit line on Veers Mill Road running again from Montgomery College, Rockville, through the Rockville Metro Station to the Wheat Metro Station, connecting the 2 sides of the red line. That could be up and running as early as 2026.
Yep.
So, which remarkably would be a much faster connection between the 2 sides of the red line than, let's say, the purple line. And then, of course, the central part of the 355 corridor, which we would describe from running from Montgomery College, Rockville to Montgomery College, Germantown, an area that has limited mass transit services now, that could be open as early as 2028.
But all these things can be accelerated if we have money. I mean, not being able to bond. I mean, we're trying to put together what jobs we get out of the state government, which is never enough money to build a major project. So you're trying to assemble that money. You're trying to, like right now, we're in the blessing of having a surplus. We wouldn't even be having this discussion if we hadn't had a surplus this year. So we can take some money and redirect, a stronger capital budget. But the moment you've got bonding authority and you put this in place, you put the bonds out there and you start, you get the money and you start building the projects. You accelerate planning. I mean, the stupidest stuff that ever, we had to do, and it was before my time and it's in my time, is spreading out design. And I'm talking about people saying, well, we're going to spend these $12 million over 2 or 3 years to plan this. And the planning could have been done in a year. We didn't have the capacity in the capital budget to condense 3 years of spending into 1 year of spending. So that's how crippled we've been by this very archaic and backward system. And I can tell you right now, every other county executive, particularly the big county executives, are going to be asking for the same thing, local taxing authority, because they're all in the same bind. And when the governor pulled the plug, on the 3.5 billion, everybody realized there are no projects unless we build them. And that's reality. And he's putting 150 million back. Unfortunately, we're beneficiaries of that, and we're very happy. But even with the full 3.5, there wasn't much money in there for us.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to sit down and talk with you or anybody else who wants to get into details of this.
Probably he'd be willing to go to Cleveland with you so that you could ride
Yes, to
the
ride the one out there.
helpline through central Cleveland. You can see the development.
We can't spin it as a snow story today, so we'll work on a media strategy.
You could also go to Richmond and see the line they put down the middle of the main road in Richmond. They actually took away lanes and running a BRT in the middle of the road.
Interesting.
And just by as a last thing I'll say, when I first got involved in this and was trying to figure out how do we solve our transit problem, I met people who were involved in the Toronto BRT. They built that system in like 2 years. It's like, wow. Because, we're not building tunnels and bridges and really expensive stuff. You're building in a built environment where you already got the road. So if we had the resources, this would not take us another decade to finish.
So we've got a question from Suzanne. While she turns on her microphone, just want to remind everyone that we've put a lot of documents in the chat here so that you can access some of the documents that we've been talking about. Suzanne.
Hi, thanks. I just want to understand the process now. So does council have to approve all your recommendations? Do they have the final say, or and what is the deadline for all this?
They can move, it goes over to them. They'll start working on it now. They can look at the projects. We've told them which projects we didn't fund, and we're going to tell them how much they cost. They're free. This is their ability to decide they want something different. They could decide to increase bonding capacity, which we've asked for before, but they've not been willing to do. Just as Rachel said during her presentation, we used to bond at $340 million, and we've been now stuck at $280 million. $280 million buys a fraction of what 280 bought 5 years ago, and an even smaller fraction of what 340 bought 5 years ago. So we're not even staying steady with the amount of money that we're putting in.
So
there's no actual deadline, or?
So Rachel, do you want to go over the timeline for the council action?
Yes, so council will start considering the recommendation through work session as early as next month. And then they take final action at the same time as the operating budget in mid to late May.
Thanks.
So we will have to introduce by the county charter an operating budget on March 15th. So the council plan is usually have hearings on the capital budget through February and March, and then they'll transition to the operating budget, and then everything will be passed, the final votes being the week before Memorial Day.
Thank you.
There will be plenty of opportunities for the public to weigh in on these items. Of course, the county executive had a whole series of budget forums starting last summer about the capital budget, the operating budget. Now, of course, the council will have hearings on all of the projects. So a chance to come in and voice their opinions to the council about how strongly they support the county executive's recommended budget. Other questions? All right, with that, I want to make sure to thank all of the county staff and our partners in MCPS, Montgomery College, the Park and Planning Commission, WSSC Water, who collaborated on getting this budget together. This is a large project. I've got the actual printed version with me. Good reading, nighttime reading, but chock full of information. That entire book is available online at the county's website under the open budget portal. But this is a huge task done by the staff in the Office of Management and Budget, Director Jennifer Bryant, Mary Beck, the coordinator for the capital budget, assisted by, of course, Rachel Silverman, who you heard from, Josh Waters, our deputy director. But there are many people, not only in OMB, but across county government and county other affiliated agencies that worked very hard on putting this document together. So on behalf of the county executive, I want to thank all of them, our department heads and their staff, for all of the work in putting this together, and look forward to our continued work to put out an operating budget in just 2 months.
It will be done.
So with that, thank you all very much for participating. If there are any questions afterwards, of course, feel free to reach out to the Office of Management and Budget, and we can certainly help you out. Thank you all very much. Stay warm.